Vayigash. Vayigash elav Yehuda. Vayomer bi Adoni dabernav decha davar ba'aznei Adoni vayichar apcha ba'avdecha ki chamocha keFaro. So the context is that Joseph has just said he's going to not release Benjamin, and their brothers feel so much is at stake. And Judah comes close, and he says to him, "Bi Adoni, please, my Lord, let me speak now, your servant, in the ears of my Lord. Don't be angry at your servant, because you are like Pharaoh." Rashi says, "Vayigash elav yikansu dvarai ba'aznecha. Let my words enter into your ears. From here we learn that Judah spoke to Joseph harshly, because had he spoken in the respectful manner, he wouldn't have had reason to suspect that Joseph would get upset. And then he said, "You are like Pharaoh." Rashi here offers several explanations. Number one, Chashuv ata be'enai kamelach. You're in my eyes as chashuv, as distinguished as though you were the king. We're Parshas Vayigash, Akiva. Parshas Vayigash. That's the first explanation. That's the pshat. That's the literal. Midrasho sofcha l'kota lav b'tzaras kamo shalaka paro ayidei ziknato Sarah. In the end, you're going to be struck down with saras, just like Pharaoh, who was struck down with saras because he kept back Benjamin's great-grandmother for one night. So, and then he says, Davar acher, alternatively, Ma Paro gozer ve'eno mekayim, just like Pharaoh makes degrees and does not fulfill them. Maftiach ve'eno oseh, makes promises and doesn't do what he keeps. Af ata kein, so too are you. V'chizihu simas ayin, and is this the placing of the eye that you say you're going to place upon him? Meaning to say that you said to us, bring him down to me and I will set my eye on him. And now we see what you had in mind. So you're like Pharaoh, that you make promises and don't keep them. Alternatively, ki kamocha paro, if you antagonize me, I'll kill both you and your master and Pharaoh. So what part of this, Eric?
Well, I now that I see it again, I understand that he's quoting Midrash. So
yeah, but he doesn't quote every Midrash. He quotes the ones he likes.
So the idea that he brings us forward, the pshat makes sense, because Joseph's the number 2 person, most powerful, second most powerful person. Land, where's the Pharaoh's ring? He's got all of his power. He can do anything about it. You're in his court. You're not going to speak aggressively to him. You're not going to threaten him. You're going to be diplomatic. You're going to.
So which one of these is? So that is.
I mean, the Midrashim, the Peshat is not. The Peshat is what I expected, but the
Midrashim. The Midrash imagines that this is not just a debate between Judah and Joseph at that moment in history, but that this is a future debate between the tribes of Judah and the tribes of Joseph. And that's the Haftorah, that there was a division between the northern kingdom, which is Joseph, Ephraim, and the southern kingdom, which is Judah. And that the Midrash imagines Judah and Joseph banging against each other. And Judah's, literally speaks like this, his hairy chest pushing into Joseph and saying to him, "Who do you think you are?" And that this is the 2 brothers coming here and fighting it out. That's how the Midrash understands it, that this is a universal, that this is a struggle that continues for generations until the Messianic era, when the Mashiach comes and combines. That's the Messiah that's the Haftorah for Vayigash, is the Haftorah of coming from Yechezkel. And he says, take one piece of wood and write on it Judah, and take the other piece of wood and write it upon Joseph, and then bring the two together and make it one tree. So the Midrash understands that there's this huge fight, not like some mealy mouthed.
So Rashi's thinking it's foreshadowing.
That's what the Midrash is saying. That explanation is in line with that.
And is there a similar foreshadowing in Pharaoh not keeping his promise? Because have we seen Pharaoh not keep a promise before again? What's the basis of the Midrash saying Pharaoh makes promises and doesn't keep them? Has that happened so far?
Well, yes. Yeah, because he did. Yes, he did. Because if you look at chapter 41, verse 12, there it says there was it says in verse 12, the Shami Tanu Narivri, there was with us a Hebrew slave, a servant to the Saratabachim, and we told him our dreams. And Rashi writes there, he was a slave, and it's written in the laws of Egypt, Shein Evan Moel, that a slave can't be the ruler and cannot wear the princely garments. So Pharaoh had placed Joseph in this role when he wasn't worthy to be in that role. And also Pharaoh had manipulated the whole kingdom to get all the land for himself. So here that goes back to that theme. But so there is this evidence that Pharaoh was somebody who was manipulating the laws for his own benefit. And this is also what going back to what Eric was saying about, how you doing, Simon? Hi, Yoni. You have the Chumash with you, Yoni?
Yeah.
So going back, we're Parshas Vayigash, going back to what Eric was saying, how did Judah get the strength to speak up to him like that, to speak up to the Pharaoh? Here's what the Alshach says. He comments on it. There's a lot of commentary on it, but a lot of commentary on why Rashi chose that explanation. I'll just cite one, and then we'll go on to the next Rashi, because there's so many powerful things here. So he says, at first, Judah thought that all this was coming, that all of what he was going through was coming about because of the sale of Joseph, measure for measure, and they'll all be slaves. That's what Judah thought originally. Judah thought originally, okay, we deserve to be slaves because we sold Joseph, so it's going to be appropriate that I'll end up as a slave. And therefore he says, and then he says, that's why he says in the previous portion, the sin of your servant. But now when he saw that Joseph was freeing the brothers and he was only keeping Benjamin as a slave, and Benjamin obviously had nothing to do with it, he understood that all of this was not for the sin of what he did to Joseph, it was all a pretext. And so therefore he felt like this person was a pretext, he was just doing this corrupt thing. He saw through him.
Felt like he had nothing else to lose also, maybe like at this point, if he's going to be so Joseph's going to be so untrustworthy, they didn't know it was Joseph yet, but they know it's a brother yet, but
what's the point?
We're all going to end up, right?
And also, I guess Rashi is maybe saying that sometimes you have to speak harsh to a ruler. When you have nothing else to lose, you might as well go down with some glory, right?
Stand up.
So this also is similar.
There's no reason, even though that commentary you just read, Judah has still at this point has no reason to know that the person he's speaking to, who turns out to be Joseph, knows of the sin that they.
Well, that's all question. This is a question in the Bible. Just like we say in Shimon and Levi, like also in the story of Jacob, when he takes the brachos from Isaac, also in the Akedah, when Isaac goes to the slot, do they know? Do the figures know? And there's hints to the fact that maybe they do know. So does Judah know he's Joseph? Does Isaac know he's going to the Akedah? Does does Isaac realize it's Jacob in front of him? So it's a whole question. But here I saw here's one more commentary on this, then we'll go on. He says, this is from the Sakachava Rebbe. The Sakachava Rebbe, he says as follows. He says, why was Judah so forceful when he wanted when he wanted to bring back Benjamin? So he says, at first Judah thought that, behold, the servitude in Egypt was beginning, and so he accepted it all with love. This is a very similar answer. But when he heard it was just Benjamin, he said, well, then it's not the servitude anymore. It's not the beginning. It's not the slavery. And so therefore he wrote, it's the same answer, but a little bit, the details are different, but it's when he was willing to accept it as a divine decree, he'll accept anything. But he realized that this is just the pretext of a two-bit political hack. He's like, I'm not accepting it. That's basically that's basically what he's saying. Okay, so now I'll go back to the portion. So then he says, Adonisha, but nevertheless, even though he's speaking harshly, he uses the word your servant many times. Your servant, and he also says your servant, my father, and he's punished for that. The Midrash says. Okay. So anyway, go on. We'll see. Rashi talks about how he's punished. I have to look it up. Because he called his father my servant. Here, where's the Rashi? We're going to get to all these Rashis. Where is it? How does it say how he's punished? Hold on one second. Let's see what AI says. It doesn't. All right, it's too much. The problem is you go down the rabbit hole, you type the question in, and you see all these interesting divrei Torah, but we're not going to read them now. We'll read them. I'll find that, Dan. It's not an obscure source. It's a very common source, which I should know. It's slipping my mind. Adonisha Asavadav more. So he says, my Lord, referring to Joseph, asked his servant, that is me, do you have a father or a brother? So Rashi says, Mitchila, from the outset, you came at us with a false charge. Why did you have to ask all these questions? Were we seeking to marry your daughter? Why were you asking these questions? What are you, the FBI? I mean, why were you asking these questions? Did we want to marry your daughter? You're seeking to marry our sister? Nevertheless, we held nothing back from you. We held nothing back. We held nothing back from asking you these questions. And we said to him, my Lord, we have a elderly father, the Yelad Zikunim Katan, and he has a young child of his old age, and his brother died, and he remained alone. To his mother, he remained alone. He alone is left to his mother, and his father loves him. What do you mean? What do you mean? Means to say, what does it mean? He alone is left to his mother. Me'usa ha'em. From that mother, he has no brother. His brother is died. Why did they say his brother has died? They never said that before. So why is he saying that? Rashi says yira, because of fear. Hayamotzi dvar sheker mipiv. He let something false out of his mouth. He said, Im omer oshu kayam. If he would have said he was alive, Yomar aviu etzli. If he had said that Joseph was alive, they would have said, bring him to me. So he said he was dead. Okay. And you said, bring him down. You said to your servant, bring him down to me, and I'll place my eyes upon him. He said, we said to my Lord, the boy can't leave his father, and if he leaves his father, he'll die. Rashi says, if he abandons his father, doagimanu, we're worried, Shema Yamus Baderach, maybe he'll die on the journey. Sharei Imo Baderach Mesa, for his mother died on the journey. Okay. Pasuk Chav Gimel. And you said to your servants, if he doesn't go down with you, no longer be able to see my face. When we went up to see your servant, my father, and we told him the words of my Lord. So there it says, there he said, my servant, my father. He referred to his father as my servant.
So that's where he gets in trouble for?
I said it's one of the times. He did it a few times, and he ended up getting in trouble. Let's see if Rashi doesn't comment on it here. So I don't know where he comments on it. I don't remember where he comments on it, but he definitely comments on it. He definitely comments on it somewhere.
Judah called his father.
Oh, here we go. Here I found. Here's a source. Here it says, yes. Where's the source? It says 10 times the children of Jacob said to Joseph, Avdecha Avinu, your servant, my father. This is from the source called Zayit Ra'anan. He said 10 times the children of Jacob said to Joseph, your servant, our father. And Joseph heard this and was quiet. And silence is like a mission. Therefore, Joseph's life was shortened by 10 years. And we don't find, but the Gemara asked the question, but we don't find your servant, my father in the verses. We only find it 5 times. 1 time in Miketz and 4 times in Vayigash. Oh, so there was a translator between them. That's the answer. So Joseph heard it 10 times. See, Eric, so I say with the highest level of humility to Eric, because how can I tell you anything when you do so much for the Jewish people? But this is a point that when you speak to the president or you speak to the prime minister of a country, that you can never say anything that's disrespectful to the Jewish people, even if you're trying to be respectful to them, because Jacob was, they were punished because they were trying to be respectful to Pharaoh by referring to Jacob as your servant, and that was a sin. That was a sin. So it was a very fine line, obviously, but because they were greater,
But not Joseph punished. You said
well, I had said Rashi says there's a Rashi that says they were punished. Here, this commentary says Joseph was punished because he was also part of it. He was also part of it. Yeah.
So Joseph should have interrupted and say, no,
Your father is not my. Yeah.
My slave.
Yeah. He should have spoken up. He should have spoken up. Yeah, he should have spoken up. I mean, this is symbolic, but it's also important because we have to remember that when these commentaries were being written, the Jews were often groveling towards the leaders of the of the kingdom, and there was a lot at stake, just like there's a lot at stake here.
I mean, your point, respectfully, to me, but this is there is a line, right? I mean, you're always trying to walk line. You have to be respectful, especially when you're asking for something. You always treat people with respect and the respect of the office, but there's a line that you don't that you can't cross, and it's an important
And
point that we do successfully now.
And it's also, the idea is, there's a line, it's also whenever you're speaking to a person, like Judah was speaking to what he thought was Pharaoh. And whenever you're speaking to like a world leader, it's often the case, every single word is written down. Every single word is written down and recorded for posterity. So what history will remember the words that the Jewish leaders use. I remember when, never forget, that Rabbi White said that after the Crown Heights riot started. I don't know if you were in New York then, Eric. So the Crown Heights riots, you guys know what that was?
Yeah.
Yeah, what happened was David Dinkins was the mayor of New York. And
Sure.
David Dinkins was the mayor of New York, and the Rebbe's motorcade, it was a terrible traffic accident, and it killed a boy named Gavin Cato in Crown Heights. And there was a lot of tension already between the Jewish community in Crown Heights and the local Black community in Crown Heights, and a tremendous and then what happened was the Black community in Crown Heights started rioting, and Yankala Rosenbaum was killed as part of those riots. Yankala Rosenbaum was a rabbinical student who came to Crown Heights to study with the Rebbe. And David Dinkins said, let them vent. He didn't stop. Before Yankala Rosenbaum was killed, the riot started, and David Dinkins was the mayor of New York, said, let them vent. And before he said that, the Jewish communal leaders of New York met with Dinkins, and they said to him, these are not our type of Jews. They said that. The leaders of the established Jewish community said, these are not our types of Jews. So
Referring to which Jews?
the Hasidic Jews of Crown Heights.
Chabad, you see, right?
In those days, Chabad was actually a fraction of what it is today. Today, they're so much bigger, but those days it was really much weird. And
Is that part of it documented?
I'm sure it is. I'm sure it is. Rabbi Weiss was very vocal about it at the time, and I think it was reported on that. That's what they said, and I'm sure it's written down in places. So they said, these are not our types of Jews, and they gave the imprimatur for like what happened with Dinkins, and then what happened was. Yeah, well, Rabbi Weiss was very vocal. He carried a coffin to Gracie Mansion, anyways.
This was also the riot that Sharpton instigated the grocery store. Was that different?
No, Al Sharpton, that happened.
The one brawling. That was a totally different incident.
Al Sharpton, no, you're talking about, Al Sharpton has,
That's yet another.
no, Al Sharpton was upset about what happened at the Freddy's department store in Harlem, which was owned by a Jew. And he said the white interlopers are in our neighborhood, and they killed the owner. The owner of there was killed. There was a fire and he was killed. But that was a couple of years later. I don't know the exact, like.
It's I don't know exactly. It's not exact on point, but today I won't have anything to do with Sharpton, but there are Jewish leaders that,
Well, so I'll tell you a story about Sharpton. Sharpton, I do think that he has blood on his hands from that Freddy's incident. But what happened was, and I was Rabbi Weiss's assistant at the time, Riverdale. After Amadou Diallo, and there was a lot of racial tension, incredible amount of racial tension in New York in the early 2000s when I was there. After Amadou Diallo was terribly killed. I don't know if anybody.
I remember that.
He was a guy who was basically an immigrant from the Caribbeans, and he was chased home from the police, and he probably was afraid of the police, so he was reaching in his pocket to get his keys to his apartment, and the police shot him down with like 20 times in the back. So Rabbi Weiss reached out to Sharpton, and they were like really at loggerheads for the Crown Heights riots and for years after that. And Sharpton invited him to speak at a rally that Sharpton organized for Amadou Diallo. And Rabbi Weiss went, and I was with him. And Rabbi Weiss went up on the stage, and you'd have to ask Rabbi Weiss, but he made a decision that for the better or for worse, for the good of the Jewish people, needed to be there, and he's not the perfect ally, but he was somebody he felt we had to work with. So that was something I remember. But yeah, he did do, but we never invited him to speak at the shul because he did instigate that riot at Freddy's. I remember that.
He's never apologized.
He never apologized for it. He did instigate that riot at Freddy's.
Oh.
Never
The other
did.
thing about the original riot described was obviously the tragic
Wow.
accident that killed Kevin Cato,
Yeah.
but the murder of Yankov Rosenbaum was a murder. Absolutely.
No, you can't equate the two, and without question. But